In the wake of yet another horrific Islamic terror attack in London over the weekend, and the revelation that one of the victims was Christine Archibald from British Columbia, the question that comes to my mind and the minds of millions of Canadians coast to coast is, can this happen here? The short answer is yes. We need only look back at not only the murders of Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent and Corporal Nathan Cirillo by Islamic terrorists and the subsequent shootout inside Parliament, but also to numerous terror plots that have been foiled over the years by the great men and women serving this country in law enforcement and our Canadian intelligence services. So I thought it might be worth reminding Canadians just how lucky we are to have avoided a major catastrophe as so many of our close Western allies are currently facing, and discuss some of the major Islamic terror plots that have been foiled in Canada over the years. Just last year, in August, 24-year-old Strathroy, Ontario resident Aaron Driver had his plot foiled by the RCMP as he was killed on his way to carry out a bombing. Driver had had a long and open public affection for ISIS, culminating in an arrest in June 2015. At that time, though, there was insufficient evidence to charge him with a crime, so he was released. While he was being monitored ahead of the day of his attempted attack, it was due to a tip from the FBI down south that the RCMP were able to respond before he was able to take his bomb somewhere to cause harm. Interestingly, shortly after his death, the ISIS-connected news agency Amaq proclaimed Mr. Driver was a soldier of the Islamic State. Then there was the 2013 Via Rail bombing plot. In April that year, two men, Chihab Isengayer and Rayad Jasser, were arrested for plotting to bomb the Maple Leaf train route that travels between Toronto and New York as a joint venture between Via Rail and Amtrak. If you recall, the two men were caught on video surveilling the train tracks outside of Toronto. Neither men are Canadian citizens. Isengayer is from Tunisia and Jasser is a Palestinian. Isengayer was known to have traveled to Iran prior to plotting the attack. And in 2015, the two were found guilty of special terrorism-related charges, including general conspiracy of planning to commit murder in association with or for the benefit of a terrorist group. Both men are now serving life sentences. Then there was Project Samosa. 3 Muslim men stood accused of various crimes, including plots to build improvised explosive devices to use against Canadians fighting in Afghanistan at the time back in 2009. One was acquitted, but 2 others were convicted and now serving lengthy prison sentences. And while this plot was not close to being executed, the police did an excellent job of preemptively stopping them. That leaves us with the largest and most sophisticated terror plot this country has ever seen, sometimes referred to as the Toronto 18. The 2006 Ontario terrorism plot is one that all Canadians should be aware of, and not forget just because it's been 11 years since this occurred. The Al-Qaeda-inspired plot featured 18 individuals, 14 adults, 4 minors, who were plotting to detonate truck bombs in at least 3 locations, open fire in crowded areas, and storm buildings such as the CBC head office, the Toronto Stock Exchange, CSIS headquarters, that's our intelligence service, and Parliament with a plan of taking hostages and beheading the Prime Minister and other leaders. Easily one of the most sophisticated and elaborate Islamic terror plots ever seen anywhere in the world, we can thank CSIS as they planted an agent within the group and began monitoring their activities, including 2 separate training camps in remote areas in Ontario in late 2005 and in 2006. These were monitored closely by police, and despite allowing the group to gather supplies, including bomb-making equipment, they were eventually all arrested in a sting in 2006. In court, 11 of the 18 were convicted of various offenses and still serving time. Now, I'm sure the regressive left will be saying that the only reason Canada was targeted in these plots is because of our involvement in the war in Afghanistan beginning back in 2002. Thus making us invading infidels from the West in the Muslim world. But hold on a second. Let's take a look back all the way to 1991, when it had been close to 40 years since Canada had participated in any ground war, and that was Korea, and we had never had a Canadian soldier set foot in a Muslim country, and that very year Canada just so happened to be the target of our first homegrown Islamic terror plot when a group planned to bomb 2 Toronto buildings, the India Centre Cinema and the Vishnu Hindu Temple. So when the left tells you the West has brought terrorism to its doorstep by our adventures in Iraq and Afghanistan, kindly refer them to this plot and see what their reaction is. While those are the major plots that have been foiled here, there are numerous smaller isolated cases that don't get that much publicity. We need to remind ourselves about these plots. It forces Canadians to realize that we are not some kind of exception where Canadian multiculturalism is so special that we somehow integrate Islamic immigrants better than other countries and avoid the issues of radicalized Europe and the US, and frankly, well, the whole world is seeing right now. We've reported here on The Rebel recently of extremist preaching at mosques in Toronto and Montreal. And we saw in Calgary back in 2014 an anti-Israel protest by Hamas-supporting Palestinians in the community there that devolved into a fight where Israel supporters were attacked. So with all this in mind, we need to stay vigilant and aware at all times. I am hopeful that we can avoid a major incident. I believe in our law enforcement and intelligence officials. But if we've learned anything from the recent attacks, sometimes just having law enforcement being aware of these radicalized individuals is not enough. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Thanks for watching. Never miss a video, especially on Islamic terror incidents. Make sure you subscribe to the Rebel YouTube page.